The last time the Tar Heels started 500 or worse through 8 games, yeah, that was 2001, 2002. Is it time to be concerned?
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Thursday. It's December 5th, 2024. Welcome into this live edition of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, joined by our good friend, Coach Bill Robinson, head coach of the Milligan University Buffaloes, and a 2-decade veteran of Carolina basketball school. By the way, the Buffs coming off a big win last night, overcoming a 17-point deficit. Congrats, Coach. Way to go. Proud of you. Folks, you're joining us at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to thank you for making us your first listen or watch of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers, you can place a $5 bet, and if it wins, hey, guess what? You're going to get $150 back in bonus bets. Check it all out at FanDuel.com. Welcome in, all you everydayers. Glad you all are here. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders and, of course, the Locked On Tar Heels Discord members. Great to have you guys all here. Coming up on the show today, we're going to look at Carolina's defense. I want to get Coach Rob's take on what's happening because, wow. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to talk about, what do you do when you're going through a spell like this where the Tar Heels have lost 3 in a row? How do you kind of reset? How do you keep the locker room together? All those kind of questions. But before we get there, Coach, I just want to kind of have a big picture conversation first, because one of the things I noticed last night and again this morning as I've been scrolling social media and looking at the Discord and stuff like that is there's a lot of chicken littling out there. And what I mean by that is a lot of people are assuming the sky is falling. And look, I think there is cause for concern, but Coach, as I said in the cold open, the last time Carolina was 500 or worse through 8 games was the 01-02 season, which also happens to be the year I graduated high school, which also happens to be the year that Carolina went 8-20. Coach, there's a lot that goes into that. Obviously, strength of schedule plays a factor in it. Carolina's 8th in the nation in strength of schedule right now. 3 of the 4 losses are to top 10 teams and a Michigan State team that's 31st at KenPom right now. So, Coach, I got a couple either or questions for you. So first, should we be concerned at a legitimate oh no level, or is it more a factor of the schedule at this point?
I think it's the oh no level. And I know I'm trying to stay positive as much as possible, but it's not just the losses, it's kind of how the losses came about. And that's what makes me more concerned. The great thing that we have is hope. It's early in the year. It just turned December. We've got lots of talent. It's young talent. It's still talent that's trying to blend together. The hope in Ian Jackson playing really well last night. The hope that, RJ's still our leader and he's going to find a way to get that shot to go down. He's not going to have 1 for 11 from 3-point line again, stuff like that. So it's time to be concerned. Yes, the level's high, yes, but there's still great hope, and there's still a lot of basketball, including the entire conference schedule in front of us. So let's not freak out yet, but it may be time to do a reset, a little bit more serious than maybe what Coach Davis was talking about at the end of Maui.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned Coach Davis there. Coach, do you think this, is it an issue of Carolina doesn't have what they need on their roster? Is it an issue of, look, because you've got some returners, but you've got multiple new pieces, both from the transfer portal and the high school ranks, and you're trying to figure out how to play a brand new way. So even the guys who are returners, it's like, oh, we can't just do what we've done and it's a whole new thing. So where is it with that? Do you think it's a roster that is inherently flawed, or is it hey, I think it's going to get there. It just needs to gel?
I think it's the second one. I think it's the talent that's there. It's just a different team. It's going to have to be a different way. I still think defensively they've got to come up with something different than what they're doing right now. Again, I'm out of the picture. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and I'm a coach, and I'm figuring stuff out. But again, if things aren't working, we got to find something new. This is the type of day for me. If I'm coach, we're going back to day one. What did we talk about day one? What did we talk about? Defensive transition. We talk about how we defend ball screens. We talk about getting right back to the fundamentals again. I thought the defensive transition last night, from what I saw, was poor. Again, we played last night. I went and reviewed stuff as quickly as I could this morning after class, but it seems like it's stuff we've got to get back to day one. The defensive transition, how you defend ball screens, staying in front of the basketball. I've seen practices where they have drills and all that stuff, and they need to get back to the fundamentals and really getting back to how we can defend together as a group.
Coach, it seems like there's a bit of a concerning combination with some of the players. For example, the 3G lineup, right? We've talked about how talented they are with Elliot and Seth and RJ. But we've also noted that they are small, and it feels like, to my eyeballs as I watch these games, that is a concern, and it is part of the problem. But then it's not like the bigs are offering much, if we can just be fair to that. It's you're just not getting a ton of production there. I mean, kind of felt the best about Ty Claude of all the bigs last night, and he kind of gets hurt at the end of the game there. 3 offensive rebounds, 3 putbacks on all of them, but you just need more. So, Coach, it feels like Carolina's size or lack thereof, not just in the front court, but in the backcourt as well, is a problem. And I feel like the Heels are going to be at a deficit from that standpoint in most games this season.
And you have the length and the size that Alabama has, and are still as quick as the guards that we have. It's a bad combination. There's not a great matchup. From 1 through 5 last night, there was not a great matchup. So
RJ's guarding Jaron Stevenson, for crying out loud.
so how do you come up with a defensive scheme to be able to counteract that? Again, I've talked about zone for a month or two now. We've talked about coming up with something different, coming up with some kind of different scheme to be able to counteract some of that. Of course, when they shot the ball great last night from 3 too, but a lot of those threes were shooting drills threes. They were wide open threes, whether it was transition threes or whether it was off, a paint touch and a kick out. And it just seemed like the defense was constantly reacting last night. Didn't dictate anything last night. Great defenses dictate where the ball goes, who touches the ball, who gets shots. And last night seemed like very reactive. And something's got to change.
Unfortunately, I really love it, but I also hate it. That phrase you just used, shooting drill threes, because that's exactly what it was. We talked about this in the post game. Mark Campbell and I did. Alabama's offense, Coach, is, objectively third party. It's a thing of beauty to watch them play and share the ball and move, and that is certainly going to put Carolina's defense in a lot of trouble. Obviously, we'll talk more about the defense here in a little bit. Coach, last week on the show, like literally a week ago today, you and I said that we thought it was time to make a lineup change. We saw a starting lineup change specifically. We did see one of those with Drake Powell coming into the starting lineup for Jae'lyn Withers. Coach, were you pleased with that decision? I know it doesn't really factor much in last night's result or play, but ultimately, are you glad that Coach Davis pulled the trigger on that?
Yeah, Drake needs to be on the floor. He needs to be on the floor more. And again, I'm looking at the stat sheet right now. Stat sheet for Drake doesn't matter to me, because he's going to do so many things that just don't show up and don't reflect it. He'll still make buckets. He'll still get rebounds and steals, but he just needs to be on the floor for his energy, his ability to defend and to defend multiple people. And when you're talking about the size and the length, those are the type of things that we're talking about. And he gives that. He provides that. So I just think the more time he gets on the floor, the better he's going to get, and he'll develop a lot quicker, obviously, in those situations. So hopefully that's a trend that we'll see remain. And I think he just needs to be in a lineup.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, all told, Carolina continues to struggle. As you've kind of alluded to, a lot of that is on the defensive end. That's where we want to go. In the last 4 games, Adam Lucas pointed this out last night in his quick takeaways. Carolina, the 3 Maui games and this Alabama game, Carolina has led for 11 minutes and 13 seconds of those 165 minutes of basketball action. That's not going to win you many basketball games, and obviously Carolina has a lot to do. So what we want to do, Coach, is get to talking about the defensive issues. Are they fixable? What is it? Is it wrinkles like zone, pressure, more of that? We're going to try to figure out that answer here coming up in just a second. right after I tell you about FanDuel. Hey, get ready to tackle the NFL action right now with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers, you can bet $5, and if you win, you get $150 back in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So maybe you're watching a game, you get a hunch, and you're like, man, let me go check this out. Well, you can view live play-by-play, see the updated stats, so much more right there on the same page where you're placing your bets. How about the ACC regular season championship odds at FanDuel? I think these might change a little bit after what Duke did last night and after what Carolina did last night. But right now, Duke favored by -140, Carolina second at +320, Clemson and Pitt tied at +1200, and then Wake Forest and Virginia tied at +3000. So go check all that out and so much more at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and go make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, Coach, I do want to get to talking about North Carolina's defense. In the past, not the past 5 games, in the 5 games that Carolina has either played a high major opponent or Dayton, here are the point totals that they've surrendered. 92 to Kansas, 92 to Dayton, 85 to Auburn, 94 to Michigan State in overtime, and 94 to Alabama. No, I know possessions play a role in that, points per possession, all of that. It's not just about the raw numbers, but it does give you at least a little bit of a picture of what's going on there against these high major opponents. Coach, yet again, for the 4th straight game and the 5th time in Carolina's first 8 games, they got into a double-digit deficit in the first half. These defensive issues are clear and obvious. Before we get to what could be some changes, what is it that you're seeing that's causing these defensive problems?
The first thing for me last night was a lot of live ball turnovers. Seemed like there's a lot of live ball turnovers that lead to transition opportunities. Those where you get those open threes, that's where you get those breakaway layups or dunks. You just have to take care of the basketball better. The second thing is shot selection. Shot selection's got to be premium when you're playing a team that wants to play fast and wants to get up and down. So that's obviously very important. The defensive field goal percentage, I think, is what's most alarming to me right now from a defensive perspective. The defensive field goal percentage, I think Alabama shot right at 50% last night, maybe just a shade under. But those are the type of things that I'm most concerned about. The inability to stay in front of the basketball. Everybody knows Mark Sears is left-handed, and to see him be able to penetrate left bothers me. You just got to sit there and say, okay, he might be able to get by me. He's not going to get by me left. I'm going to make him go right. I'm going to make him, because when he goes right, he's not nearly as effective passing the ball or shooting the ball. He'll maybe tend to pull up more than take it all the way to the rim, make him shoot that mid-range jumper instead of letting him get a layup or an open step back 3, things like that. So those are the things that are really concerning from what I saw. It's got to get fixed. It's got to get fixed fast.
Coach, here's what's interesting to me. Watching the very beginning of the game, Carolina came out with this defensive intensity. There was a near shot clock violation, a shot clock violation, and then RJ stripping, it was either Jaron Stevenson or Grant Nelson on the first 3 possessions. And I literally typed into our show notes, is this sustainable? Because if Carolina could do that, they'd be in such good shape. I mean, they were active, they were helping, they did just all the things that you have to do without the rim protection. Is that sustainable? Maybe not for 40 minutes, but for 35 of the 40 minutes. And at what level, like why couldn't there be more of that last night?
I think it's sustainable if the minutes are distributed the way that we think they can be. With Ian playing as well as he did last night, if you could play those 4 guards for 2 spots and really get after it for 20 plus minutes each or whatever and spread a little bit more out, yes. But because of the fact you have to have 3 guards on the floor, because honestly, they're the best talent we have right now, I think that's where it becomes harder and harder to maintain that for a 40-minute game.
So, talking about staying in front of the ball, I mean, I feel like that is #1 priority. Like if that's not, everything else is going to feed off of that. How is that similar to what we often talk about with rebounding? Is that an issue of foot speed and Carolina just doesn't have it? Or like rebounding, is it will and want to, and you just got to be committed on that end of the floor?
There's definitely technique to it, but at the same time, I think it's more of, hey, you got to take this challenge personally. He is not going to get by you. I don't care what happens. you got to do whatever you can just to stay in front, no matter what. So that's a skill. It's something you teach, but it's also, hey, you got to stay in a stance. You got to stay down, and you've got to be able to focus on nothing more than just keeping that ball. Don't worry about getting screened. Don't worry about anything else. Just stay in front of the ball. Rick Majerus, who was a great coach at Utah for all those years, his teaching point for staying in front of the basketball, he would say, stay in front of the ball. That was it. It was all motivation, and he would just challenge this guy and just say, just stay in front of the ball. Whatever it takes, you need to stay. And there's drills you can do, and we play a lot of one-on-one. I know they play a lot of one-on-one. You have to practice it, but at the same time, it's got to be internal. You got to say, I'm going to be competitive enough that this guy, no matter what happens, he's just not going to get past me.
So, that kind of starts leading us in then to talking fixes. You mentioned in the last segment, as you mentioned pretty much all off season, like the potential of all these defensive wrinkles that could really help. Because again, Carolina has to do something to protect what they don't have. You got to find ways to hide the deficiencies. I don't want to keep harping on not having a big man, but it's clearly hurting, Coach. And so whether it's zone, whether it's the pressure we saw applied here and there last night, I mean, at least there was a little bit of that. Just how could Carolina start employing some of these wrinkles to put themselves in a better situation?
Yeah, a big thing about it is trust and belief. We had a little discussion in practice, and a mini discussion, maybe it'd been a little bit of a loud discussion the other day about believing what we're doing. It doesn't matter what we do. You can put all the wrinkles in you want, but you've got to sell it in a way where the guys believe in it and trust in it, because if they don't believe it and want to make it work, it's not going to work. I was going to say this for later, but I'll bring it out now. In a situation like this, the relationship that Coach Davis has with these guys, I think, is what is most important, because now it's going to be more office conversations. It's going to be more locker room conversations where you sit down with guys and say, hey, listen, I need you to believe that we are good. I need you to believe that this direction we're going is the right direction to go in. And if you don't believe that this is right, then we've got to be able to get on the same page somehow. And because Coach Davis has great relationship with his players, I think this is the time where he really has to lean on that more than others, because it really comes down to, do you trust me? Do you believe that we're going in the direction? Do you believe I have your best interest at heart? Those are the type of things that he's going to have these tough discussions in the next, sit downs in the next week or so.
Yeah. And it's funny because you've got a pretty quick turnaround to Georgia Tech on Saturday, but then you got a week off for finals ahead of LaSalle that next week. So there is some time, but you got to get that quick turnaround for Georgia Tech. Coach, it's funny, as we continue thinking about defense here, a lot of times we talk about defense feeding offense and how, just the solid defense, maybe getting steals can lead to runouts and other things, which Carolina needs. But we don't often talk about the flip of that, of how offense not going well can maybe suck your energy on the defensive end of the court. To that point, Ryan Ivey asked a great question in the chat. He says, how does lack of early shot making factor into loss of defensive intensity? Seems like we maybe dropped our focus when we didn't hit the first few shots. Coach, I felt that in real time last night. It was like Carolina had all this intensity. They came out, it felt like Carolina won the first 3-4 minutes of the game, and yet it was like 2-0 because they missed a couple bunnies and a couple shots, things like that. So I'm just curious your thoughts on this question from Ryan.
Yeah, these kids they're kids. And when you make a shot, it gives you energy. It makes you want to defend. I've got a player right now. Every time he makes a shot, his energy level goes up. It fuels him. All of a sudden, he's chasing people on the defensive end. He's staying in front of the ball. But you miss a shot, it's hard not to carry that over. That's where the maturity comes in as a player. But yeah, when you make some shots, it also gives you the time to get back and get set. That's the bigger thing. That's one of the big concerns, I think, watching what I watched this morning, is to see Carolina make a bucket and Alabama get it out and pitch it one pass, another pass, and get a shot at the other end. The Grant Nelson, we scored, Nelson fell down and they throw the other end of the floor, and nobody realized he was back there, and he gets a dunk. Little things like that just kind of take your energy. It just deflates your balloon, and all of a sudden you're just sitting there going, well, here we go again. So making shots, especially early, fuels that defense. It gives you that momentum, and momentum, as we said, it's a wonderful thing. It's an awful thing depending on which side you're on. But the offensive the decision making, not just the making shots, but the decision making, making sure you take care of the basketball, making sure you're not giving any fuel to them at the other end. All those things go, but it's so important to take great shots and to make shots early on. He's absolutely right.
Grant Nelson out there. It's like the dude when you're playing pickup and homie just won't go play defense and is cherry picking. I was like, come on, man. I was such a frustrating basket, but a great point. And it's also frustrating because we're used to watching Carolina be the team that does that to other teams, get the ball right out of the basket and go and score. And so it's like I think that doubly twists the knife into your gut, coach, and is a frustration. With this shot making, going back to that side of it. I know it's never going to be Carolina's identity to be like a Virginia, but they know how to do that, of like, hey, we're not making any shots, but we're going to buckle down and defend for 30 seconds. And I don't think Coach Davis is trying to figure that out, that version of basketball. But I like that you bring maturity into the equation with that of like, hey, look, I know the ball's not going through the hoop, but you know what travels? Defense. And it doesn't matter if your ball's not going through the hoop, if theirs isn't either. And you got to find a way to get better than that. Speaking of, just quickly before we move on, Coach, it's been a struggle for RJ, as you mentioned earlier. That struggle continues. One of 11 from 3 last night. I haven't pulled up his season shooting. Let's see if they've updated it on. They have updated it on Sports Reference. So right now, Coach RJ, yes, averaging 18.4 points a game, but Coach Rob, he is shooting 35.3% from the field, 24.2% from 3. Like, it makes me think back to Marcus Page's senior year. Remember, he had that electric junior year and then just really kind of struggled for a lot of his senior year. And so I think I keep feeling like RJ is going to get there. He's going to figure it out. But there's a world in which maybe he doesn't. Do you think it's just a slump? Is it mechanical? What are you seeing from RJ? Is he pressing because he feels the weight of these losses? What's going on?
I think it's more mental than anything. I don't think there's anything wrong with his form. I don't think there's anything wrong, with him mentally. I think is what it's the problem right now. He does feel like he needs to carry the team, especially as the team starts to struggle. Then he feels like he needs to carry more of the load. It's also a fact of people defensive philosophies wise. They're going to just not give him good looks from the perimeter. How do you defend him? You run him off the line, make him put the ball on the floor. Make him shoot twos. That's fine. If he makes a pull-up jumper, he made a couple pull-up jumpers. That's why I don't think it's form-wise. His form looks good. He's still making shots. I'm just not going to let him get good looks from 3. We're going to run him off the line. We'll switch. We'll do whatever. We'll make him put the ball on the floor, but we're just not going to give him good looks. And then as the game goes on, and these deficits happen, then all of a sudden you feel like you need to make more threes. And I think that puts more pressure on him too, to make I got to make a big bucket here. And so I think it's a combination of things. I think it's mental. I think he feels like he needs to carry the load. And I think the deficits hurt when he feels like, I got to hit that grand slam with nobody on base mentality. And we've just got to get away from that. And I don't think it's something to talk about. I don't want to talk about it too much. You want to let him continue to shoot his way out of the slump. But I don't think it's the type of point where you say, hey, you need to stop shooting. That's not it. I think he just next one, hey, let's make sure the toes are on the line. It's not a 30-footer. It's not something contested. It's not something in transition unless your toes are on the line wide open. But I think that's more of what I would encourage him to do at this point.
Well, it is, as you kind of alluded to already, Coach, there is a pretty big reset that needs to happen, maybe all the way back to day one. The Tar Heels have really just 2 days to figure that out before they take on Georgia Tech on Saturday afternoon. And that's a little bit of a slice of more real because now ACC play, at least for one game, is upon us. So I want to ask Coach, how do you go about handling this reset? How do you keep the locker room together when the guys are obviously down and bummed? We'll get to all of that coming up in just a second. Coach, when you're going through a spell like this, it's got to be tough. And I don't want to pour salt in your own wound, but before your win last night, I know Milligan was on a 4-game losing streak. So, I mean, you're the perfect person to ask this question to right now. Like, what was your messaging to the team in that moment? How did you find that reset? How did you start saying, like, guys, as you were saying with Coach Davis earlier, trust me, stick together? What is the message in a moment like this?
Yeah, sometimes we like to go back to day one. I'll literally go back to day one's practice plan. and say, okay, these were the things that were most important to me then. They should be more important. Same things. They should be as important when we get into a slump or we're not playing real well. It may be a chance you go two different directions, and you got to know your guys. You got to know kind of what they're thinking. It could be that pump up practice where you put them, tell them, hey, bring some music. We're going to play it as loud as we want. We're going to just get up and down. We're going to have some fun. Let's remember why we all are here. We love to play the game of basketball. Let's find a little bit of joy. Let's just have some time together. Another thing we like to do is again, we got guys who live off campus. We got guys who live in different dorms. Maybe it's time we just we all go out to eat together. Just and have the budget take a little bite that night. But let's go out to Amigos. Let's sit down and have some Mexican food and just hang out. I know you're missing Amigos now.
I'd love some Amigos right now, Coach. Oh, that sounds so good. Keep going.
Yeah, that's the place to go, and the guys get to all hang out and just spend time together. No agenda. We're not sitting here trying to, come up with some kind of special game to play to get to know each other or anything. Hey, guys know each other. Let's just hang out. Let's just have a good time, and hopefully that will, again, with the coaching staff, everybody kind of bonding together. But another thing we like to do is maybe put a little wrinkle in offensively, just to mentally. Let's throw in a new set. Let's do a new out of bounds play. Let's do something to make them think a little bit, so it's not just the same old stuff. It's fresh, it's new, it's something that makes me think a little bit. And then if we can find some success with that new wrinkle, that new play, whatever it is. So we put in 3 new sets the other night. We put in a new out of bounds play. We talked about a new defense that we still haven't run, but it's something that we have if we need to. Just little things like that. So it is fresh, it is new. It's something that kind of stimulates our brain a little bit, have some fun, and not practice too long. We don't need a 3-hour practice. Just keep it, because everybody's exhausted this time of year. Everybody's getting ready for finals. You don't want it to make it too mentally, rough or physically tough, but just an opportunity for us to maybe put some new stuff in and keep it flowing.
Well, to that point, Coach, and to what you said about getting that time together, Carolina has Georgia Tech Saturday, but then it's going to be finals week where you have the opportunity to do that. And most students are gone, and you don't really have a choice other than to be just you. And I think that is kind of a helpful thing. It just is a matter of the calendar, but it's going to be a big thing for the Tar Heels. And I hope that even just that time that you were talking about can be that good reset for them there, and certainly looking forward to that. But the problem is you got a conference game ahead of that. So got to make sure to take care of that. Coach, one of the things earlier in the chat, let me go back up and find it. Ninja Warrior Bros said Ian looked really good. Yes, let's acknowledge that. We haven't talked about how well Ian played last night, but he said we knew this team wouldn't be playing their best basketball in November and early December, and the schedule was so hard. Kansas is 1, Alabama was 2, and Auburn is 2. Yes, absolutely, with all of that. But Coach, it's the middle chunk of that comment I want to focus in on, that we knew this team wouldn't be playing their best basketball in November and early December. Is that a conversation you have with the team at all? Do you say like guys, look, I know we're still trying to figure each other out. I know like it's going to take a while to really be fully together, or is that something you just it, the coaching staff's aware of it, but you don't talk to the guys about it?
I laugh because it's exactly what we talked about this week.
Really?
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, because we do run a lot of stuff, and we I believe in variety and change versus simplicity and execution. So we do a lot of different stuff. It's going to take a while for it to click. It's going to take a while for everybody to get on the same page. It's going to take a while to get familiar with all the different things we do offensively and defensively. And the guys need to know that, hey, I understand. And there's some confusion along the way because it's not really clicked yet. January, February is when we need to be playing the best. Carolina obviously into March. We don't go that late, but it's one of those things where they have to understand that it is a process. The Sixers have ruined that word, but it is a process, and it's going to take some time. So let's not feel like we have to be, the great today, but we got to continually getting better, and we're seeking excellence. It's not the type of sport you can seek perfection. It's just not. So you seek excellence every day. You're trying to get better every day, and continually trying to figure yourself out. I think we're better this morning than we were yesterday morning because of what we learned last night. We learned more about each other. We learned more about the team and what we're, where we're going. And I think that's part of it. And it is a process. I kind of hate that word now, but we want our guys to understand that it's going to get better. if we continue to believe in each other and continue to do what we need to do on a daily basis to get better, both individually and as a team. It's the combination of it.
I keep laughing, Coach. You were talking about like going to a restaurant, eating together, but we're not doing a bunch of like team building games. I just imagine you guys in the middle of a Mexican restaurant doing trust falls and everybody staring at you and laughing and throwing chips and salsa. So that image is in my head now the rest of the day. Last question, and then we'll get out of here, Coach. We've talked about the coaching messaging, and obviously that's important. But at some level, that's like dad or mom talking to you and saying, here's what we're doing and here's how we're going to figure this out. And that's important. But what role do the players holding each other accountable play in this? Because, while there is a concern about maybe losing some of the guys getting down and being worried, the older, more mature guys, the guys that have been around, what role do they have to play in keeping everything tied up?
I saw a quote the other day, basically alluding to the fact that good teams are coach-led, great teams are player-led.
That's good.
Phil Jackson didn't do any disciplining with his Bulls team when they were great. Michael and Scotty, for the most part, did all the they took care of everything. So if somebody made a mistake, they're the ones who were stepping in. The coaching staff it was big picture with Phil always, but all the little things, it was team-led. So I think it's very important, but the problem with that is you have to have a certain level of respect so that the players can fix things in a positive way. Because there's times where somebody will come up and say, hey, you did this wrong. And they'll say, who are you? You made a mistake too. I talk about Mark Benson all the time. Mark and I played together. We came in together. We were very different. I'm from the small little resort town. He's from Fort Greene, Brooklyn, back in the day when it was kind of rough. And I would make a pass and hit him in the hands, and he would fumble it out of bounds, and it was a perfect pass. And I would sit there and say, what are you doing? You stupid jerk. You dropped the ball out of bounds. And no, I wouldn't. I would say, hey, man, my fault. And he would say, no, it's my fault. And I'd say, forget about it. Let's go play defense. And you've got to have that kind of relationship internally. And during the heat of the game, you can't try to fix stuff. You can't be pointing. And that's scared me last night when I saw Elliot. They gave up a bucket and he got lost on defense and his hands went up and looked around like he didn't know what he was doing.
Up. Yep.
Body language was so bad, and I'm sitting there going, that's not a good sign. You've got to never let them see you sweat. The old commercial, back in the day. But those are the type of things I think we've got to be able to find ways to fix things together in a very positive way and move forward. And I just didn't see it last night.
Yeah. One flip of that I did see that was encouraging, like very late. I think it was after, Coach Oates was trying to call Bama off at the very end. They went in to get that dunk, and RJ was like, no, that's not happening, and took that foul at the very end. In the huddle right after that, he came around his guys, patted, I forget who, I think it was Elliot and somebody else on the head, like, all right, boys, we're going to be okay. So it was interesting to see both sides of that equation, because I saw the same thing you were talking about with Elliot, and hopefully those better signs will win the day in the end. All right, Coach, great insight as always. Thank you so much. Again, congrats to the Buffs on their big win last night. Hopefully the Tar Heels can ride that momentum into Saturday, get some revenge against Georgia Tech for that no call down last year in Atlanta. RJ was fouled, baby. You know it, and I know it, and everybody else knows it. Folks, Coach Rob has written a book, Carolina Basketball School History, Stories, and Drills. You can find it right now on Amazon. You can email Coach to get it directly from him. What a great Christmas gift. We are 20 days away from Christmas, man. Make sure you pick up your copy for your favorite Tar Heel, your favorite Duke Blue Devil, and, of course, your favorite Wolf Puppy, because they all want to read it as well. Folks, if you're not subscribed to the show, both on YouTube and audio, make sure you do that. We're working to get to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube in 3 years of the show. That's coming up fast. So if you're not subscribed, man, I just want to make a direct ask. Would you subscribe to our show? If you haven't joined Locked On Tar Heels Insiders or Locked On Tar Heels Discord, would love to have you do that. Come join all the great conversations. Links for that is in the show notes. As an insider, you get extra perks. You get to directly text with me and all sorts of other things like that. You guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Even today, where we got to talk about some kind of stuff, it's all right. Bigger fish to fry, and it's a great day to be a Tar Heel. It's a great day to be alive and breathe and go stare at all the Christmas lights out in my living room out there, baby. I can't wait to go see it. We'll talk again tomorrow to get ready for that Georgia Tech game. Coach Pat Kilby's going to join me for that. But until then, Peace.